I'm Dr. Erthea Nance, Regional Administrator for EPA Region 6. EPA's mission is to protect people's health and the environment. One of my goals is to prioritize and emphasize environmental justice, or EJ, and climate change in everything we do. We've started a special project in South and West Dallas that does just that by studying the pollution that families in these neighborhoods live with every day. Local residents have organized and fought to keep their communities healthy. EPA wants to support and engage in this work by learning more about contaminants in the air, water, and soil, and by providing families with data to understand what they're facing. The project is called Cumulative Impact Assessment. Our team will study the impacts of pollution from cement batch plants and other industrial sources, also emissions from vehicles, from stormwater contamination, and other possible toxic chemical exposures. This is the first project of its kind in Texas, and one of only a few across the country. Now I would like to introduce the team members, Ed McKeel and Amy Wilson, who will explain what the cumulative impact process is.
Hello, my name is Ed McKeel with the Environmental Protection Agency, Region 6. Today we'll discuss the Cumulative Impacts Assessment Project that is currently underway in two areas of the city of Dallas in Texas. The project focuses on West Dallas and Joppa, which is a South Dallas community, two environmental justice communities. This presentation will detail the scope of the project, what cumulative impacts are, why we chose these areas, what EPA is doing, and how we work with the individuals and groups living with within the affected communities, keep them updated on our progress. This Cumulative Impacts Project is the second in the nation performed by EPA and a new way for the agency to share information about potential environmental stressors in local communities. The Cumulative Impacts Assessment Project will be investigating environmental contamination and hazards that may occur by living in the vicinity of concrete batch plants. As in the picture in the background of this slide, a concrete batch plant is a facility that combines raw materials such as sand, water, aggregates, and other ready-mix chemicals to create concrete, which we use for buildings and sidewalks and such. Over the past several years, communities in the city of Dallas have expressed public health concern and environmental concerns regarding several of these facilities that are located directly next to residential neighborhoods. These plant operations result in the emission of particulate materials and other air pollutants, which are subject to limited regulatory controls. The assessment will review some air modeling to evaluate if these batch plants enforce sufficient operating parameters and emissions through the PM10 and PM2.5 to make sure that folks are healthy and go by the state guidelines. These basically impacts to the communities will be kind of gone through by some soil sampling, water sampling, fish tissue sampling that we'll discuss later in the presentation. So the first step in making any project like this successful is working with affected communities. As with most EPA programs and projects, the best way forward is to establish a dialogue for meaningful community engagement. We can't do our job without community support. Typically, communities have information and knowledge needed about the area because they've lived there for years, and EPA coming into these communities as strangers, we don't always have that knowledge. So what we did was we spent time identifying community groups and other citizens who advocate for clean environment and environmental justice operating in West and South Dallas or Joppa. We began conversations and outreach meetings with several groups to let them know about the project. These groups included Singleton Unidos, or United, West Dallas One, these are both West Dallas community groups, the Joppa Freedmen's Town Association, Justice for Joppa, and Downwinders at Risk. The community groups assisted us with historical information and sharing locations of concern that EPA needed to look at for fish tissue, water, and soil sampling. These groups also guided us in the best ways of keeping the larger communities up to date of the larger status of the project. We also worked with the different departments within the City of Dallas, which included members of the Dallas City Council. EPA defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement to all people regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So what does that mean? The slide shows the results of an environmental justice screening of West Dallas. It demonstrates that the people living in this area of the city are made up of either highly Latino or African American descent. Average income and life expectancy is lower than the national standard, and due to industrial zoning in the area, there is a higher percentage of environmental pollution within that 9 square mile radius. In America, environmental justice communities are typically living around more sources of environmental stressors than other places in the country. And so EPA works with these communities to ensure they get the same degrees of protection from environmental hazards so everyone can live healthy lives. You can see on the bar chart on this slide some of the hazards these EJ screens measure, like particulate matter in the air, ozone, and proximity to hazardous waste are just a few of them. When working with local communities, it's imperative that EPA run these reports so we can better understand what is affecting the local populations. For more information, the link is right there at the top. You can go to www.epa.gov/EJ screen. And you can actually put in your own home address or area and get an EJ screen for exactly what's affecting you. Like the previous slide, this EJ screen shows that the Joppa community has similar issues with contamination, the difference being that Joppa has a higher African American population. Historically, Joppa is one of the last freedmen settlements existing in the country, or a place where freed slaves settled after the Civil War. Both West Dallas from the previous slide and this slide on the Joppa communities have spent years raising community awareness about the air contamination issues in their local areas. There are also EPA Superfund sites and cleanups that have occurred in each community, which is another indicator of why they were good candidates for this project. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to my coworker, Amy Wilson, who will detail the more technical parts of the cumulative impact assessment. Amy.
Hello, my name is Amy Wilson. I'm with the Environmental Protection Agency Region 6 office in air permitting. So the cumulative impact assessment will obtain data through air modeling, fish tissue sampling and analysis, water sampling and analysis, soil sampling and analysis, and that data will be gathered along with other publicly available data to produce a cumulative impact assessment report. The air modeling is being performed to assess the impact that multiple concrete batch plants have on each community. The modeling will look at the operational limits the TCQ has in their concrete batch plant standard permit, and we'll look to see if the standard permit is protective of the PM 2.5 NAC standard. The modeling will also take into consideration emissions from mobile sources at the concrete batch plant and other industrial facilities that are located within each of these communities. The modeling will look at both the dispersion of air toxics and also the deposition of air pollutants. The modeling will look at not only PM 2.5, and it will look at silica and nickel. Water sampling and fish tissue analysis has already been conducted. We collected fish tissue samples on January 30th and January 31st from Fish Trap Lake in West Dallas and at Little Lemon Lake in Joppa. The fish tissue will be analyzed for mercury. Water samples were collected the week of February 19th at locations across West Dallas and Joppa. These samples will be tested for pH, alkalinity, conductivity, total suspense solids, dissolved oxygen, and fecal coliform bacteria. Some sampling locations will also be tested for metals. Soil sampling will be collected the week of March 18th across West Dallas and Joppa. These samples will be analyzed for metals, mercury, cyanide, and pH, along with volatile organic compounds. So the timeline of the project is shown on the screen. EPA Region 6 first began discussing the options for conducting a cumulative impact assessment project in January of 2023. The project plan and statement of work were developed in May, followed by a communications plan, and we began conducting outreach in June of last year. Our work group made site visits to West Dallas and Joppa to get a feel for the community and what industry was in the area, as well as the location of bodies of water that we might be sampling. In August, our contract was fully funded and awarded. In January, we began the air modeling and the fish tissue sampling. In February, we did the water sampling. In March, we're going to be doing the soil sampling and analysis. In May, we hope to have all of our data gathered, and we will begin conducting the cumulative impact analysis portion of the project. We're hoping by August that we have a report that we can share the findings with TCEQ, the City of Dallas, and the community groups in both Joppa and West Dallas. And if you have any questions, you can contact myself or Ed McKeel.
Thank you so much for taking a look at this video. And if you do need to contact us, as Amy had said, please do so. We are available almost every day of the normal work week. Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you for joining us on our presentation of the Cumulative Impacts Assessment Pilot Project. These types of projects are still very new to EPA, and we hope to duplicate them throughout the rest of Region 6 states. As you can see, we've been working tirelessly in your community. We're very excited to deliver tools that you need to answer lingering questions about the environment you live in.